A baby's cry pierced the silence of the tower. After long hours of agonizing labor, the midwife finally announced the words everyone had been waiting for. "It's a boy." But this was no ordinary child. This was the son of King Henry VIII. The son the king had prayed for, the son the queen had failed to give him. And yet, the woman who bore him was not a queen. She wasn't even Henry's wife. She was Bessie Blount, 17, alone, hidden away from court like a shameful secret. While Catherine of Aragon, the Queen of England, endured several unsuccessful and heartbreaking labors, she bore the brunt of the blame for not giving Henry a son. Courtiers whispered behind her back, fingers pointed at her. And yet, the woman who finally gave Henry what he wanted, a healthy boy, was shut away. Bessie was kept in a tower, away from public eyes. Her triumph turned into isolation. Was it truly a son Henry needed, or was it his pride that demanded everything bend to his will, that he got everything he wanted because he was the King of England?
So why did he disgrace Bessie when she gave Henry exactly what he wanted? What happened to her and her son after this moment? Hit that like button so this story reaches more history lovers like you, because the truth behind what happened next will shock you. England, 1498. Shropshire. A baby girl is born to Sir John Blount and his wife, Catherine. They name her Elizabeth. Everyone will call her Bessie. Her father serves King Henry VII closely. He's even fought alongside the king in France. The Blount family has access, influence, a future. But here's something most people don't know. Bessie's mother, Catherine, married when she was just 10 years old. She gave birth to Bessie at 16, a teenage mother raising a daughter. They weren't just mother and child, they were almost like sisters. Catherine barely knew how to be a woman herself when Bessie arrived, and maybe that's why what happened next became possible. Maybe that's why no one protected Bessie from what was coming. As Bessie grew up, one thing became clear to everyone around her. She was beautiful. Not just pretty, beautiful in a way that turned heads, in a way that made people remember her name. We have very less surviving portraits of her today, but every written account agrees. Pale skin, full lips, a face that radiated life and energy. Her parents saw an opportunity. In Tudor England, beauty was currency, especially for girls. And if you had connections to the royal court, beauty could buy your entire family a better future. So when Bessie turned 12 years old, her parents made a decision that would seal her fate. They sent her to court. The position was maid of honor to Queen Catherine of Aragon, King Henry VIII's first wife. First, we need to understand what this meant. Being chosen as a royal lady-in-waiting was like winning the Tudor lottery. Hundreds of families competed for these positions. It meant status, wealth, marriage prospects. But the selection process was brutal. Girls had to pass tests. Tests in beauty. Yes, they actually judged girls on their looks. Tests in grace, in manners, in conversation. Could she dance? Could she play music? Could she entertain nobility without embarrassing herself? Bessie passed everything. She didn't just pass, she excelled. Her musical skills impressed everyone. Her dancing was exceptional. She moved through the court like she'd been born there. At 12 years old, Bessie Blount entered the world of King Henry VIII. She had no idea she'd just walked into a trap.
The year is 1514. Henry VIII is 23 years old, and he doesn't look anything like the bloated, diseased tyrant you see in later portraits. Right now, he's athletic, handsome, intelligent. He has flaming auburn hair and bright eyes that light up when he's excited. He rides horses, he jousts, he dances at court masquerades until dawn. These masquerades are legendary. Costume parties where nobility drinks, dances, and indulges in behavior they'd never admit to in daylight. The masks give everyone permission to forget their place, to pretend the rules don't apply. At one of these masquerades, King Henry notices a girl dancing. She's graceful, sensual even. She moves like the music lives inside her body. Her energy is infectious. Everyone watches her.
Henry can't look away. That girl is Bessie Blount. She's 13 years old. Now here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Because by most historical estimates, when Henry VIII began pursuing Bessie romantically, she was barely a teenager. Maybe 13, maybe 14 at most. Tudor girls often hit puberty later than modern children. Poor nutrition, harsh living conditions. Bessie might still have looked like a child.
But Henry didn't care. He was the king. He could have anything he wanted, and he wanted her. Kings were supposed to keep their affairs discreet. That was the unwritten rule. You could have a mistress, everyone did, but you didn't parade it around. You didn't let it become public gossip. Henry tried to be discreet. He really did. But his passion for Bessie threatened to spill over. Historian Philippa Jones later wrote that Henry's feelings for her were dangerously intense. He was supposed to view mistresses as casual entertainment. Instead, he was falling for this teenage girl. In July 1514, Henry sent Bessie's father a payment, £146. That's over $200,000 in today's money. A gift, a thank you, a payment for services rendered. It was essentially buying off the girl's father so he could continue the relationship without interference. Disgusting? Yes. But it gets worse. Because Bessie had a major problem that most of Henry's other mistresses didn't have. She wasn't married.
Here's why that mattered. When kings took mistresses, they usually chose married women. That way, if the mistress got pregnant, everyone could pretend the baby belonged to her husband. Problem solved. Scandal avoided. Bessie had no husband, no protection, no one to blame if something went wrong. She was completely exposed. But Henry showered her with gifts anyway. Love letters written in his own hand, expensive jewelry, fine clothes, special treatment at court. He played the role of a chivalrous knight courting his lady. How could a 13-year-old girl resist the attention of a king? How could she even understand what was happening to her? While Bessie enjoyed Henry's attention, another woman was suffering, Queen Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was nearly a decade older than Bessie. She was practical, deeply religious, devoted to her husband, and she was failing at the one job that mattered in Tudor England, giving the king a son. Catherine kept getting pregnant, and she kept losing the babies. Miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, each one breaking her heart a little more, each one disappointing Henry a little more. Finally, in 1516, Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby, a girl. They named her Mary, the future Queen Mary I of England. Henry smiled, he celebrated, he pretended to be happy. But inside, he was devastated. He needed a son, an heir, someone to inherit the throne after he died. In Tudor England, the idea of a woman ruling was almost unthinkable. It seemed like chaos waiting to happen. So Henry began to worry. What if Catherine could never give him a son? What if he was doomed to die without a male heir? And while Catherine suffered through this nightmare, while she prayed and cried and tried desperately to please her husband, Bessie was living the high life. Their affair continued for years, longer than most of Henry's other relationships, much longer. He kept coming back to her. And then, in late 1518, everything changed. Bessie realized she was pregnant.
Think about that moment. You're maybe 17 years old, unmarried, and you're carrying the King of England's baby. There's no hiding this, no way out. Everyone will know. The entire court will gossip. The Queen will find out. Your life is about to explode. But here's the truly bizarre part. Catherine of Aragon was pregnant at the same time. Two women, both carrying King Henry's children, one his wife, one his teenage mistress. It should have been Catherine's triumph, her chance to finally give Henry the son he wanted. Instead, Catherine delivered a stillborn daughter, another dead baby, another failure. While Catherine grieved, Bessie's belly kept growing, healthy, strong, no complications. Henry made a rare smart decision. He moved Bessie far away from the royal palace, to a remote monastery where she could give birth quietly, away from Catherine's devastated eyes, away from court gossip, at least for now. In June 1519, Bessie went into labor. Henry sent his men to watch, to report back immediately, to tell him the moment the baby arrived. The birth took hours, painful, exhausting. And when the baby finally came, it was a boy, a healthy baby boy. Everything Henry had been praying for, everything Catherine couldn't give him. They named him Henry Fitzroy. The name was a message. Fitz meant son of in Norman French. Roy meant king, son of the king. Henry was officially acknowledging this child as his own. He was rubbing it in Catherine's face. But the name meant something even darker. It meant Henry now had proof. He could father sons. The problem wasn't with him, it was with Catherine. This moment, this baby, destroyed Catherine of Aragon's position. Before Fitzroy, Henry could hope that maybe the next pregnancy would work. Maybe Catherine would finally succeed. Now, he knew she wouldn't. Bessie had just sealed the Queen's fate, and she'd done it without even trying. Henry was overjoyed. He couldn't contain himself. When Catherine of Aragon left court to visit friends, Henry took the opportunity to parade his baby son around the palace. He showed little Henry Fitzroy to everyone. Look what I made. Look at my son. The cruelty is almost unimaginable. But Bessie got her own moment of recognition. She'd given the king what no one else could. She'd officially made it into the history books. But her celebration wouldn't last long, because almost immediately after the birth, Henry did something that shocked everyone who knew about the affair. He ended the relationship. Just like that. Done. Finished. Moving on. Why? That's the question historians still debate. Some think Henry simply didn't need her anymore. She'd proven he could have sons. Mission accomplished. Time to find someone new. But there's a darker theory. According to some historians, childbirth repulsed Henry. He had a very specific view of mistresses. They were supposed to exist in an ethereal realm of chivalric fantasy. They were supposed to be untouchable, perfect, idealized. Babies ruined that illusion. Babies were messy, real. They reminded Henry that his mistresses were actual women with bodies that did gross biological things. So the moment Bessie gave birth, Henry's attraction died. She'd served her purpose. Now she was used goods. But there might have been another reason for the sudden breakup, and this one's even crueler. Right around the time Henry dropped Bessie, another woman caught his eye. Mary Boleyn. Yes, that Boleyn family. Anne Boleyn's older sister became Henry's next mistress, and later, Anne herself would become his second wife. The woman he'd break from the Catholic Church to marry, the woman he'd eventually behead. But right now, in 1519, Mary Boleyn was walking into Henry's life, and Bessie Blount was walking out. Here's something most people don't know. Multiple sources from the time say Bessie was more beautiful than Anne Boleyn, more charming, more graceful. Yet Anne would become queen, and Bessie would be forgotten. Why? Maybe because Bessie's greatest strength became her greatest weakness. She'd given Henry a son. She'd proven what he needed to know. Now, she was expendable. Anne did not make the same mistake. She'd watched her sister Mary be discarded and Bessie Blount erased from court. Two women who had given themselves too easily. Two women Henry no longer needed. Anne decided her worth would not come from being taken quickly and cast aside. Instead, she would hold back. She would turn refusal into power. She would make Henry wait, make him hunger, make him fight for her. And in doing so, she would force him to stake his crown, his church, and his kingdom just to claim her. But that's a different story. Right now, we're watching Bessie's world crumble. Henry wanted her married off, fast, before people started asking awkward questions. So, he found her a husband, Gilbert Talboys, Baron of Kyme, an arranged marriage. No choice, no discussion.
And here's the disturbing detail that often gets overlooked. Gilbert's family had a documented history of mental illness. Insanity ran in his bloodline. Henry VIII, the man who'd held Bessie in his arms, who'd written her love letters, who'd fathered her child, married her off to a family of lunatics. The wedding happened in 1522. Bessie was roughly 24 years old. She'd gone from the king's favorite to a countryside wife in 3 years. But the cruelest part of the marriage wasn't Gilbert. It was what the marriage meant for her son. Henry Fitzroy was taken from her, not officially, not legally, but practically. He was the acknowledged son of the king. That meant palace officials controlled his education, his upbringing, his future. Bessie could visit him, occasionally, briefly, but she couldn't raise him, couldn't be his mother in any real sense. She'd bring him gifts when she was allowed to see him, a doublet made of white satin, 2 horses, expensive, beautiful animals. Little Henry loved horseback riding, just like his father. These visits were all she had, stolen moments with a son who barely knew her. Imagine that. You carry a child, nearly die bringing him into the world, and then he's taken away because he's too important to be raised by you. Bessie tried to make her marriage work. She really did. She had 3 children with Gilbert. She played the role of country noblewoman. She pretended her old life never happened. But Tudor England was merciless. In 1530, Gilbert died. Bessie was a widow at 32.
And immediately, the vultures circled. She was still beautiful, still connected to the king, still the mother of Henry Fitzroy, who everyone knew might one day inherit the throne if Henry never had a legitimate son. Lord Leonard Grey came calling. He was powerful, influential, 20 years older than Bessie. He proposed marriage, and Bessie shocked everyone by saying no. She refused his money, his title, his offer. Why? Because she knew her worth. She'd been the mistress of the King of England. She'd given birth to a royal child. She wasn't going to settle for another arranged marriage to someone she didn't love. Instead, she did something almost unheard of for a Tudor woman. She married for love. Baron Edward Fiennes, at least 12 years younger than her, not particularly wealthy, no major political connections, but she chose him. And that choice must have felt like freedom. For a few brief years, Bessie was actually happy. And then July 1536 arrived. Henry Fitzroy died. Her son, 17 years old, dead from a sudden, mysterious illness. The official explanation was tuberculosis, consumption, as they called it then, a wasting disease that destroyed the lungs and left victims weak and feverish. But here's the suspicious part. King Henry ordered an immediate burial, bare-bones ceremony, no public mourning, no funeral, and he specifically barred Bessie from attending. Why the secrecy? Some historians believe Henry Fitzroy actually died of pneumonic plague, a highly contagious disease that could spread like wildfire through the court. If that's true, Henry's secrecy makes sense. He was protecting himself and his remaining heirs. But for Bessie, it meant she never got to say goodbye to her son. She wasn't there when he was buried. She couldn't mourn him properly. After everything she'd sacrificed, her childhood, her reputation, her entire life, she couldn't even attend her own son's funeral. While all of this was happening to Bessie, King Henry was making the history of England. He'd divorced Catherine of Aragon, broken from the Catholic Church to do it, married Anne of Boleyn. Then he had Anne beheaded in 1536 after she failed to give him a son. He'd married Jane Seymour. She'd given him a son, Edward VI, and then died from complications after childbirth. Now Henry was searching for wife number 4. He chose Anne of Cleves, a German princess he'd never met in person. His advisors showed him a portrait, and he agreed to the marriage. And then Bessie Blount made a truly bizarre decision. She returned to court.
Why would she do that? After everything Henry had done to her, after he'd used her, discarded her, married her off, taken her son, and banned her from the funeral. Why go back? We don't know. History doesn't tell us what she was thinking. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she missed the excitement of court life. Maybe she wanted to stay close to Henry, in case he ever needed her again. Or maybe she just couldn't stay away. She became Anne of Cleves' lady-in-waiting. Imagine that, serving your ex-lover's new wife, watching him fall in and out of love, watching him repeat the same patterns over and over. Bessie started getting sick, a mysterious illness that no one could diagnose, severe enough that she had to leave court and return home to recover. She never served another queen. By 1539, maybe 1540, Bessie Blount was dead. She was 40 years old, maybe 41. The exact date of her death is unknown. The cause is disputed. Some historians think it was tuberculosis, the same disease that killed her son, the same wasting illness that destroyed so many Tudor lives. But there's another theory. Bessie died shortly after giving birth to her third daughter with Edward Fiennes, a girl named Margaret, which means she might have died in childbirth, or from complications afterward, infection, hemorrhaging, blood loss. No one knows where Bessie Blount is buried. Her grave is lost, unmarked, forgotten. The woman who proved Henry VIII could father sons. The woman whose baby set off a chain reaction that led to Catherine of Aragon's divorce and England's break from the Catholic Church. Bessie Blount didn't choose any of this. She was 12 years old when her parents sent her to court, 13 when the king noticed her, maybe 14 when the affair began. By modern standards, she was a child, and everyone around her, her parents, the courtiers, the king himself, used her. They used her beauty, her youth, her body. When she'd served her purpose, they threw her away. Here's something often overlooked. Despite everything, Bessie and Henry exchanged New Year's gifts for years after their affair ended. This is documented in court records. What that meant, we can't know.
Affection, obligation, simple courtesy between a king and the mother of his acknowledged son. History doesn't tell us. We don't know. What we do know is that Bessie deserves to be remembered, not as a footnote, not as one of Henry's mistresses. She deserves to be remembered as a girl who never had a choice, who was beautiful in a time when beauty was dangerous, who survived as long as she could in a world designed to consume her. What do you think about Bessie's story? Was she a victim of her time, or did she have more agency than history admits? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more untold stories, subscribe to this channel. Because the real history, it's always darker than the textbooks claim.